Before you buy a pre-cut center console wrap, you might want to think about doing it yourself. I'm Frugal Tesla Guy, and I'm going to show you how this may not necessarily be any easier than doing it yourself. Well, if you're like any Tesla owner, whether it's the Model 3 and of course the new Y, you are not a big fan of the center console finish. And what you're seeing right here is a wrapped center console with the matte black. But this right here is what the finish looks like. And quite honestly, it's not a bad look, but the problem is it attracts fingerprints and it scratches very easily. So again, people go to wrapping the center console to help avoid scratching it, and not to mention to avoid those fingerprints as well. So when it really comes to doing it yourself and applying the wrap itself, one of the biggest concerns that people tend to have is with the cup holder, because you've got these rounded surfaces right here and you're going to be dealing with some pretty intricate cuts. So in order to avoid that, a lot of people have gone to third-party services, such as this one right here, and you can see it's pre-cut for you. Now, this company right here that this came from is a company called Kenrico. And in fact, if you look at the back of this, it says second chance, because this is the part of wrapping the center console that can be the most difficult. And even with the pre-cuts, it can be very difficult because you have to place it on there just right. And if you don't, and you get toward the end and it's not quite lined up right, you got to take it all off and try it again. And it can be quite time consuming in order to get this done. But in my humble opinion, doing it yourself and cutting it yourself is a lot easier. But you've got to make sure you've got the right tools. So let's get right into those tools. First and foremost, you're going to need a brand new, never been used razor blade. The sharper, the better, because you can make those precise cuts. This right here is called a safe scrape blade, and this actually came with one of the kits that I purchased. But you can also get these on Amazon. Of course, be sure to post a link to it. And that just allows you to kind of tuck everything in to these different crevices. I've got another one right here that I most likely won't use, but I'll have it as a backup just in case. But the third and really the most important tool that you're going to need when it comes to at least the cup holders is this right here. That's right. This is my wife's hair dryer. Now, you're not going to need this at all if you're using a third-party wrap that's pre-cut, but if you're doing it yourself, this is what actually makes it easier. So let's get into that. And the first part of the center console that we'll do is going to be the cup holders, and we'll show you how you use this as part of the process. All right, now I'm going to measure from this side to this side, and I'm just going to give it a nice, I would say, over this one right here. Okay, looks good. All right, so the next step is to go ahead and just expose the sticky side and start putting it on. So the way I like to do this is you can put it nice tight, stick it on to the top of this. And what this is this little silver piece sits up higher. And what that will do is create a little bit of an air pocket between this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it nice and tight. I'm going to put it on the other side onto that silver piece right here. All right. And now we can kind of work with it. So now I just kind of find, and you just kind of take it to the edge. Just kind of stick it on there. And again, with that nice little canopy on there, it does make it a lot easier. And you can kind of just slowly work it, kind of let it stick to the surface a little bit, but don't commit completely, and get it all on there without any bubbles. and you get a nice tight surface to work with. Now don't worry about this here, because this is something that's going to work with a nice trick that we're going to do over here. So we'll get to that in a bit, but right now it's going to kind of get this down. And now I'm going to start committing here. See how I'm getting it nice tight on there. Okay, we're not too worried about these edges here, because these will eventually stick quite well. Right. A bit of a bubble right there, not too big of a deal. Let's kind of work that out. Good. Okay, so we have finished really sticking this down onto the surface. Now we've got right over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So what you'll notice is it's not quite reaching the edge there, because I had it kind of tight on either side here. And then of course we've still got to cut this out here. But before we cut it all out, right, and then we got this here, this will eventually all be able to tack down onto the surface. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So this is the first step, getting it all down nice and smooth. And the next step is the hair dryer. And you just kind of slowly work it, and it will melt down. All right, so what that did, obviously, kind of melts it down a bit. You don't want to melt it down too much, right? But we were able to get that to hug all the corners around the cup holder. And if you look closely, I'll take the camera down here and we can see better. But the ledge, if you notice, let's get this over here. So there you can kind of see it's around the edge. If you look, you'll see the lip. You'll see where that silver piece is, which is right down there. So where you have that, that's where you're going to be cutting, right here along there. And it's going to fit nice and perfectly around. And the same thing, remember there is kind of like the little canopy at the edge. So we can just kind of cut right along the edge there and then tuck whatever is excess down into the side, and it should look okay. So let's get to cutting and see how it goes from there. So I'm just going to first start off by cutting a hole in the center. And then we'll kind of cut give myself some room to play here. And we'll just kind of cut right at that lip of where the silver piece meets. There's a little bit of a ledge, and what I'm going to do first and foremost is put a light on there so you know, and make sure I can voila. So now you just kind of get around all the ledges there. I tell you what, that looks pretty darn good. I'm going to go ahead, take this off. We'll show you what it looks like. Okay, you kind of go around the ledge there. And as far as I'm concerned, a fairly seamless cut, and it all fits around there just nicely. Again, you can kind of tuck in some of those edges a little bit, and I'll take that with the orange tool, but I think for the most part we are looking good around the cup holder. Okay, so now it is time to do some cuts around the edges here. Make sure we've got everything. Looks good. And I'm going to go ahead, let's give it a nice little cut. And it goes right down, and there's that little bit of a gap in there. So that's actually just fine. This right here is not the matte black. This is the glossy black. And you can't really see much of a difference between This is the matte black right here, and then it goes over to more of a glossy. So the glossy, actually, you know, I'm pretty happy with it. I thought maybe I'd want to go back with the matte black, but this glossy turns out, looks like it's pretty good. I think I'm going to try the same thing that I did over here by putting it ledge over ledge. I think that's really the easiest way to do this. So let's do that. Make sure there's plenty of room on this side. I think that'll be good. All right. Got that on here. Pull it nice and tight. So there you have it. You know, this is one of those situations where even watching the video, you might think, boy, I just don't really want to take this on. But really, in the end, when you compare having done the pre-cuts myself, I've done that, and doing this from scratch on my own, there really isn't that much more difficulty when it comes to doing it on your own. Because that hairdryer being that secret weapon, that's what makes all of the difference in the world. If you don't know about that and don't use the hairdryer, this could be a very difficult task cutting around for that cup holder. So that's what makes all of the difference in the world. And quite honestly, I think it's just a much better fit around that cup holder when you use a hairdryer and do it yourself, because the pre-cuts, sometimes it's not going to fit in there just right. And even with the pre-cuts, sometimes you've actually got to cut around those edges because it may be a little bit too long. So all in all, I'm very happy with the overall process. I'm very happy with the way this turned out. This is the second time I've done it, and second time I'm happy with it. So what do you think? Is this a process you think you might be able to take on? Would you rather just stick with the pre-cuts? I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below. And if you found this video to be useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up, or better yet, if you haven't done so, you can click that subscribe button below. So thank you all so much for watching, and stay positively charged.